Hey there, it's Peter. I've got the Native Instruments Abbey Road 80s drummer today. We're going to do a quick demo. This is going to take about 15 minutes, so grab a cup of coffee and get comfortable. If you're already an expert and you're in a rush, look in the description for the jump links to the topic you're looking for. Or if you're brand new to this, look at this video here. This is just a quick 1 minute starter that you might appreciate seeing first. Okay, that probably got rid of a couple people. So what we're going to do today is talk about what this thing is, what it isn't, what it does, and how it does it. And we're going to do a bunch of listening, and finally we're going to do some more listening. So let's get right to it. Here is a track that's using the 80s drummer from Native Instruments. All right, so right away, same thing, drums soloed. All right. For the demo today, I'm using a Macintosh. I'm running Ableton Live 10, and this is Contact version 6. But this would be the same in any DAW, it'd be fine on a Windows machine, and the same thing if you're using the free Contact player. Okay, so what it is, what it isn't. This is not a pack of loops. This is two virtual acoustic drum kits that were sampled at Abbey Road Studio in London, which you play with keys or a drum pad or draw in with a pencil one drum at a time. There's actually two kits. One is the Yamaha kit, which you just heard, which was the most popular drum kit in the 80s. In fact, I grew up watching MTV thinking that all drums sound like this. And there's also the Slingerland kit. I'm going to stay with the Yamaha kit today for the sake of time. This is part of a series of 6 drum kits released by Native Instruments that each is from a different era or a different decade. This particular set of kits was curated and played by Ian Thomas, who's one of the most in-demand session drummers in London. He played with Clapton, Paul McCartney, Elton John. I'm sure that I'm barely scratching the list of what this guy has done. The studio Abbey Road is legendary, and the recording path for this authentic drum kit is through Neve hardware to a Studer tape deck, a 1970s analog Studer deck. So you do get between the personnel involved and the studio and the drums themselves, you get a ton of personality in this library, which is what it's all about. Okay, it's deeply sampled. And if you're new to that, what I mean by deeply sampled is that every one of these drums is recorded with a number of articulations. Or, for example, Like hitting the drum with the left hand is one articulation, or the right, or both to make a flam, or hitting the drum in the center versus hitting it near the side, or hitting the rim of it, or hitting the side of the drum. These are all just articulations, different techniques. Every drum in this kit is recorded with up to 16 articulations. Every articulation is recorded 6 times so that you got what we call round robins, so that if you're repeating a note and articulation again and again, it doesn't sound like a machine gun exactly repeating. It sort of varies organically like real drums and real human beings do. So you have all these drums, all these articulations, you have round robins, and every one of those is recorded at 125 levels of velocity, aka expression, aka volume. So that when you give it a ton of expression in how you play it, you get a lot of music back. Oh, and lastly, all of those drums with all of those variations of articulation and all the round robins and all the velocities are recorded not just from the close mic on the drum itself, but the overhead mics and the room mics, so that you get a multi-mic environment to mix in. More on that later when we get to the mix section of this. So that all of that is to say that it's deeply sampled, and there are thousands and thousands of samples in the thing. That is the engine of the Native Instruments 80s drummer. So let's look at what the interface of the thing is here. This is the same interface, and it's the same engine, by the way, as everything else in the series. So they're kind of interchangeable in a way, and if you master this and find it useful, there's 5 others that are from different eras that you could get into. So this interface has 4 tabs to it. You can see here we have the Grooves tab, the Options tab, the Kit tab, and finally the Mix tab. And I want to go through each of them in detail. You've been looking at the Kit tab. And what we can do in here is adjust the tuning of each drum individually. We can adjust how much of that drum is leaking into the overhead mics and the room mics. We can adjust the amp envelope of each drum, and we can unload drums we're not using so that it reduces the memory footprint and the load time because of the RAM that it conserves. And you can see the drums here. That's kind of cool. Next tab over here, this is the Options tab. I don't spend a lot of time in here actually, because out of the box, it's useful to me as it is, but there at the top, you have a velocity curve for each drum. Here, you have a selection area to select which drum is mapped out to which key on your keyboard. And at the bottom here, you have randomization options for each drum. This layout, i.e. which drum is on which key of the keyboard, the standard setting that it comes with when you open it matches all of the other drum kits in the series. So more on this later, but that's why I just leave it the way it is. Options tab. Let me jump over here to the Mixer tab and spend a little time in this. This is one of the more powerful features built into the thing, and this ties into what I was saying earlier about the engine being multi-mic sampled. So you see we have a channel for each close mic in the kit, and then we have a bunch of like kit mics and buses over here. Every channel has level, mutes, solos, sends, and pan. Wait, I have to sneeze. I'm not going to be able to sneeze. I just like feel it there. Okay, forget about it. So each channel also has a signal path. So let me click on the kick drum here, the name of the kick drum, and you can see down here at the bottom, there's a bunch of options. Here's the settings option where I can adjust independently the level of the mic in the kick drum and the level of the mic out of the kick drum. I can click to the next thing and see a parametric EQ based on the solid state ones from Neve. Here's a transient effect. Here's a compressor, solid state compressor. And there's a tape effect to give you the kind of warmth of something that's been recorded to tape. And this whole path could be saved as a custom kick drum path that I can apply to any number of different projects. And so each of these channels has its own set of effects and features. All right, let's listen to some of these mixes. You can save a whole mix or use standard ones that come with it. Let's try out something called Hardcore. Pretty roomy. How about something called Pop? It's nice, has a lot of depth to it and nuance to it. Here's the mix that I was using for my project. Here's the kick drum soloed. And in fact, you can actually go in the settings and play around with the inside and outside mics. That's all out. Let's check out all in. Get a lot more of the beater on the head. Now a little bit of a mix of the two. Snare drum has mics on top and mics on the bottom. Here's just the bottom mic. You can hear the snares. That's a AKG 414 on the bottom. Here's a SM57 on the top. Nice and thick. What if I add in the room mics again? There's all that depth I like. Let's solo the overheads. Nice stereo image. Here's a room mic. Here's an interesting feature you'd only find on a drum kit made in the 80s. There's something they used to do. I don't think many people are doing this anymore, but taking a talkie mic from a room and just compressing the hell out of it and tracking it. Kind of an accidental technique somebody invented from just using a talkback mic in the studio and realizing that it's kind of nasty and crunchy and gross, and that might be useful in the 80s. So here's just soloed the ball and biscuit mic that's compressed like crazy. Okay, that's pretty gross, but, you know, put into a whole mix. All right, so that is the mix tab. In the grooves tab, this is not something I use a lot because I prefer to just play in all the drums that I do to give it a very human feel and to be original to my concept. But if you're in a rush, or maybe you're kind of new to figuring out what it is that drummers actually do, this could be a great place for you to start. You have a bunch of little MIDI clips here that they're not audio loops, they're MIDI clips, so they can be edited. They were recorded in by human beings, so they have a lot of personality and flow to them, and there's a lot of them organized nicely. We can audition them right here in the Grooves window. I just randomly picked something there. It sounds pretty crazy. Or it sounds crazy at this tempo anyways. Let me see what else is in here. Take on me. Yeah, what if I like that? Let me just drag it into a track. And I can play it here in my track. So obviously that's MIDI, which means I can edit it to my heart's content. What if I grab these snare notes and made them toms. Or anything I want. So that's a quick tour of what the grooves window is to help you get started. So there's the whole interface. You have grooves, options, the kit, and the mix window. All right, so let's just dive in here and just listen to every one of these drums real close. I'm going to start with the kick. That's the kick, the muted kick drum. Here's the open kick. Snare. That's alternating right and left hand. Here's the cross stick on the snare. Rim shot on the snare. That's when they hit the snare in the middle of the snare, but the shank of the stick hits the rim at the same time. This is hitting the snare, alternating right and left hand, but hitting it not in the center of the drum, a little bit farther off center. Just the rim. Snare's turned off. Flam. Buzz roll, and you'll notice when I release the key, it gives you a flam. Here's an interesting feature. This is a sample of the snare drum doing what they called in the 80s the skin on skin. They take an extra snare drum head and flip it over and just put it on the snare to get this dead drum machine vibe. I'm reminded of a Huey Lewis song. Hi-hats. Hi-hat a little tighter. Hi-hat open, close with the foot, open, close with the foot. You can adjust how open is with the mod wheel. Tom-toms. Tom-toms with rim shots. Crash cymbals. Tip. Edge. Bell. Ride cymbal. Tip. Edge. Bell. Another crash, tip, edge, bell. China cymbal. Also China cymbal. Splash. The cymbals all have choke samples, so if I hit a cymbal and then hit the choke key, it cuts it off. And it actually has a release sample, so it's not just stopping the sample of the cymbal, it's actually stopping and crossfading to a choke. Here's some auxiliary stuff. Sticks hitting together. Hand claps. Solo hand clap. Tambourine shake. Tambourine tap. High cowbell mute. High cowbell open. Low cowbell mute and open. Couple special features particular to Abbey Road Studio 2. There's a room in the back of Studio 2 that has a mirrored ceiling and walls. So it's a pretty aggressive sounding room. And we have the snare and toms sampled in that room. All right, so that's all the individual drum sounds. One thing I want to point out is that in the series, the Native Instruments Abbey Road Drum Series, these are all interchangeable kits to some extent. So right in mid-project, if I want to try the sound of a different kit from a different era, I'm just a click and a drag away from doing that. So returning back to my example, let's try a different kit. I can jump to my browser where I have other kits. And let's take the 60s kit and throw it in place of this. I'm going to solo that. That's not a bad kit for this mix. It doesn't sound 80s in any way, but it's a great sounding kit. Well, you can hear that it's in the same room for sure. Here's another one. This is from the studio drummer from Native Instruments. And in the end, if I just decide I want to go back to what I started with, I have that right here. And I can, again, just click and drag it in. No fuss, no muss. Take a note of the instruments here in the browser. You can see that each of these comes with full versions of the kit and then light versions of the kit. The light version doesn't have all the round robins. So it has less variation when you play it, but a lot less memory and loads really quick. All right, you made it to the end. Punch your questions into the comments down below. I answer all of them. Take a look at links for the other demos I made for the Native Instruments Abbey Road Drummer Series, and I will see you later.